Hey film buffs, happy Thanksgiving if you're watching this on the day that I put it out and you live in America and I get it put out on Thanksgiving. There's a lot of stipulations, but nonetheless, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to Film Feature 43. Today we're talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is the fourth Ghostbusters film, or the third film, or the second film, depending on where it falls in canon. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. So in the beginning of the video, I'm going to give a little bit of a review, talk about the casting and what I liked about the film, what I didn't like, and then I'm going to talk about things that I noticed in the film that are spoiler heavy, and then at the end, I'm going to talk about why I think that this is either Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters 3, or Ghostbusters 4. So there are going to be spoilers in the middle. I'll let you guys know when that is. But to start, if you're worried about numbers and where I think this falls on a scale of 1 to 10, I think that this film is a 6.5 out of 10. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I think that it was good for what it was, but realistically, I wanted a little bit more out of it. It fell into some of the traps that I thought it was going to, where it avoided a lot of the traps that I thought it was going to as well. So I'd say 6.5 or 7 out of 10 is where I'd put it, if that means anything to you. I know I'm not the all-knowing Rotten Tomatoes, but that's just my opinion. And one thing that I think that the film did really well in some aspects and really poorly in others is the casting. I think McKenna Grace did a really good job as a younger, smaller Egon that happened to be a girl. It was Egon's granddaughter. She did really well being that dry, kind of witty, smart person that Egon was in the first two films.
There's definitely a very slim chance we'll survive.
Just in kid form, and having it where she's has trouble making friends and she's smarter than everybody else, but she doesn't want to seem to be that way because she wants to make friends. I feel like would be a believable path as a younger Egon would have taken. You might recognize McKenna Grace as the girl that they use when they can't realistically de-age somebody down to child age. She was young Tanya Harding in I, Tonya, and she was young Carol Danvers in Captain Marvel. And you even might recognize her voice as a young Daphne Blake from Scoob. I think she was even in a film with Chris Evans. I think it was called Gifted. So you might recognize her from that. I think she is going to be a rising star, or she is a star. And I enjoyed her in this film. I've enjoyed her in other films. So I think she's going to be a good actress, a good up-and-comer. Another good up-and-comer that I think you should watch out for is Finn Wolfhard. I think he's great in most of the stuff that he's in. But that being said, I don't think his performance in this was anything to write home about. You know him from It, you know him from Stranger Things. This film, he didn't really give me anything that I thought, oh wow, that's a standout performance. I think the same can be said about Carrie Coon, who plays the mom. It just wasn't anything that I was super excited about. Someone else's performance who I did really like in this was the sexiest man alive, Paul Rudd, who played kind of a Rick Moranis-esque character. He wasn't the main focal point of the story that the marketing would have you believe. He was more of an outside character trying to guide the kids a little bit. He was kind of an audience stand-in where he was like,
"This thing is real?"
"Oh, that's from the original Ghostbusters. I remember that. That's cool." And I think they used that to the effect where they didn't overuse it. They didn't overuse Paul Rudd. He really gave me some Brian Fantana vibes with some of the stuff that he said, which I love Anchorman. I think they could have definitely overused Paul Rudd, and I don't think that they did. So that was a plus for this film, in my opinion. I went with a friend, and he said that he wished they would have used Paul Rudd a little bit more. I kind of liked him as the Rick Moranis outsider role. Another person who I thought did really well in the role was Celeste O'Connor, which I knew from the movie Freaky. She plays Finn Wolfhard's love interest, and I think she did a really good job. She was funny and had moments where I thought her acting surpassed what I expected from some side character who ends up being a main character by the end of the film. Kind of the meet-cute teen type situation. And I think she went above and beyond in that role where you wouldn't really expect somebody to go above and beyond. Slight casting spoilers if you haven't seen the film yet. The OGGBs are back, and I think this film struck a good balance of having them be in the film, but it's not completely the Bill Murray, the Dan Aykroyd, and the Ernie Hudson being there and being the center of attention for the most part. And on the flip side, they're not just one-off cameos who are just spewing catchphrases.
Look, I don't go to Chinatown, I don't drive Wacos, and I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
As a cab driver or a hearse driver or something like that. There were some characters that I didn't like and some casting choices that I didn't like. The two that I'm talking about mainly are Podcast and, spoiler again, Gozer from the original Ghostbusters. I didn't like them for two separate reasons. I'll start with Gozer. In the original Ghostbusters, it was kind of a blank slate. You didn't know if Gozer was a man, if Gozer was a woman. It was just Gozer. And in this film, they decided to cast Olivia Wilde as Gozer, and to me, she was too recognizable. It took me, as soon as I saw her, it took me out of the film. I was like, oh, that's Olivia Wilde. That's weird. I don't know why they made that decision, but that's just me. Maybe you thought it was fine. I think they should have either altered the face a little bit to not be as obvious, or cast somebody completely different. Maybe a nobody, or maybe somebody a little less recognizable, where it wouldn't take you out of the moment seeing this character return from the original Ghostbusters. The second character that I mentioned was Podcast, and it had nothing to do with the actor or his acting ability. He was just too quippy. He kind of seemed like an MCU sidekick plucked out of Shang-Chi or Ant-Man or something like that and dropped into this film where everything that he said was a quip. And that can be fine. I think they strike a good balance in, say, like the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. But this character, just everything he said was a quip.
I love this car.
And that's reminds me more so of the second Guardians of the Galaxy film. It just, everything can't be a quip, and that's not just the MCU. I think that's a big problem with the MCU, where every tense scene gets undercut, so it takes the tension out of it. And it wasn't just the actor. There's a scene where the gatekeeper jumps on top of Paul Rudd's car and the tires flatten. It's just throughout the entire film, and I think that's a problem with 21st century filmmaking in general. There's no real nuance to the humor. I think some of the things that were said really cracked me up, and some of the things that were said I just didn't care for. But again, that's my personal opinion. You might think everything that's said is hilarious, and that's perfectly fine as well. I think that's something that kind of hurt this film, in my opinion, because it just seemed like it was constant. And whenever it wasn't the MCU type humor 30 to 50% of the time, it was kind of teen, meet-cute-esque humor, which could have been what they were going for. It really reminded me of like Stranger Things, and there was a scene where, speaking of Stranger Things, they're following lights of a ghost, and it kind of really put me in that Stranger Things mentality, which may be what they were going for. I don't mind that to an extent, because I think that Stranger Things might have been doing that as an homage to Poltergeist. I don't know. I haven't seen that film in 10 to 15 years, and I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was a kid, which is a completely different story. The homages are fine. Even taking a style that's similar to something is fine, but to me it took me out of the film a lot more often than I would have liked it to. Again, that is a stylistic choice. This film was made for not only the people who watched the Ghostbusters in the 80s, but they're kids that have seen Stranger Things and have seen it in these kids' adventure-esque movies. That is kind of the thing that they're going for here, and that's fine. I personally didn't like it, but overall, it wasn't a bad film. Oh, one thing I forgot about characters is they replaced Slimer with this metal-eating monster, and I didn't like that. But I understand the irony of me complaining about films doing homages and nostalgia baiting and saying, hey, I want more nostalgia in the film. So maybe it's a problem that I have. I kind of wish they would have threw Slimer in. They did in 2016, so I think this film is superior to the 2016 version, so I wish they kind of would have threw us a bone in that regard. And that's not the only reason why I like this film over the 2016 version. I think I like this film more because this seemed to be a love letter to the original.
Ghostbusters,
We're ready to believe you.
Not only the three cast members that are living, but Harold Ramis and to us fans who like the original Ghostbusters, I feel like this was written and directed and acted in a way to say, hey, we like this movie as well. We want to remember it and kind of preserve it, where the 2016 version was, we're our own thing. We don't want to rely on the original, but here's a cameo from Bill Murray. I would prefer them outright saying, hey, this is a love letter to the Ghostbusters, than saying, yeah, we knew that one existed, but we're going our own path with it. And that's what reboots are supposed to do. The 2016 really wasn't a sequel, so I guess they didn't want to just kind of lean too heavily on the original. In the end, I think that this fared a little bit better by being a love letter. And now it's time for my world famous segment of, hey, this is a weird or interesting thing that I found in the movie or that I saw in the movie. You also might think it's weird or interesting, but only if you've seen the movie that I'm talking about. And so, with that being said, here's the time code for when I'm going to talk about where I think this lands in the canon. So the first weird thing I noticed is playing chess or fiddling with a Rubik's Cube is always the movie shorthand for somebody being smart. Second thing, Phoebe's pretty much just young Sheldon, except a lot more likable. Third thing, Egon is lucky that he had a granddaughter that was a genius, because statistically, both of his grandchildren could have been idiots, and neither one of them could have known how to figure out all the scientific stuff that he left for them to find. Fourth thing, if the sexiest man alive wouldn't have opened up the Fenton thermos, none of this would have happened, because that was the catalyst for the whole movie. I feel like if I found something that I knew contained a ghost, as he did in the film, there would be no way that I would be opening it. Fifth thing, why did the ghost choose to take the form of Stay Puft Marshmallows? The only reason they did that in the first film was because that's what Ray chose to destroy them.
Tried to think of the most harmless thing. Something I loved from my childhood. Something that could never, ever possibly destroy us. Mr. Stay Puft.
I don't know who was given the choice this time, but I don't know why they would choose Stay Puft Marshmallows. I think it was more so for them to sell toys. Seventh thing, it's a really good thing that jumpsuits that were supposed to fit middle-aged men fit a 12-year-old girl, or we wouldn't have a cool shot of the kids wearing Ghostbuster jumpsuits. Seventh thing, why didn't the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper destroy the bridge to get to the evil ghost mine? If they would have, then none of the heroes would have been able to get in and foil Gozer's plans. J.K. Simmons shows up just to be ripped in half, so that was a pretty good day's work for him. Ninth thing, the earthquakes are caused by Egon's machine stopping the emergence of the evil lava ghost thing, and they started in 2010. To me, that means that Egon has been stopping this emergence since 2010, but 2021 was the date written on the Doomsday calendar. So, why wasn't 2010 the date if the emergence was trying to happen for 11 years? And finally, 1989 and 2016 are not on the Doomsday calendar that goes around the wall. So to me, that means one of two things. Either one, Gozer is selfish and only puts his/her Doomsday events on the calendar, and the Carpathian and whatever the ghost was from the 2016 version, really, their Doomsdays don't count for Gozer's calendar. Or Ghostbusters 2 and Ghostbusters 2016 are not canon, making this, instead of a Ghostbusters 3 or 4, actually Ghostbusters 2. That means that none of the events of the second and third Ghostbusters films really happened in this universe. It's kind of like a Halloween situation where in one film, Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister, and in the next film that they're not, and it's a different timeline, that the evil pink flubber and the weird Bill Maher painting really didn't try to destroy New York, but they did say that ghosts haven't been sighted in 30 years. That's closer to 1989 than it is 1984. It's heavily implied that the reason ghosts haven't been seen as much is because Egon's out there stopping them from coming through the ghost portal. So realistically, if I feel like they would have said ghosts haven't been seen in 35 years or even closer to 40 years to kind of put it in the timeline of the original Ghostbusters. If you're going by the canon of this film, 2016 definitely didn't happen because Macy's Thanksgiving Day Balloon Ghost wrecking New York City would definitely be big enough news for them to say ghosts haven't been seen in 5 years. So we can kind of scrap that one. That one's definitely not on the radar. But they do say 30 years, which puts us closer to the time of Ghostbusters 2. So to me, they're kind of hinting that the second one existed. But if they really want to kind of distance themselves from that, they can still do that, because to my knowledge, I didn't see anything that really states that Ghostbusters 2 happened. So my opinion, this is technically Ghostbusters 3, but you can make the case that it's actually Ghostbusters 2, and Ghostbusters 2 never existed. Whatever you decide, that's your own headcanon. My headcanon is Ghostbusters 2 is a passable enough film that I think it happened. I love the original, and I love the fact that this is a love letter to that original. I just wish that they would have handled the humor a little bit better, and I think it would have been a much better film, but that's my opinion. Let me know down below, guys, what you think. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, whatever stuff you want to do to help this channel grow. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.